And my role is to highlight, observe, and to reveal to the team what they may or may not see, and ask them, what are you noticing? The fact that most of your team are on the outside and we have two people that are in the center. What does that tell you about your team? For example, it's a simple illustration of how constellations work, but it's really revealing. And the part I love about it the most is that it's active. It's not a training session, and it's not about me being the expert. It's more about harnessing the collective intelligence, because the answer is there. It's in the team. We just need to create an environment for it to reveal itself.
Welcome to the Success Consultancy's Just Great People podcast, the podcast that introduces you to ordinary people who've done extraordinary things. My name is Barry Eustace, and I'd like to introduce you to today's guest. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Just Great People podcast from the Success Consultancy. I'm delighted to introduce you to Paddy Nolan from Paddy Nolan Coaching and Training. Paddy's got a really, really interesting story, and I wanted you to listen to it, hear it, and engage with it. Paddy started doing a Bachelor of Business Science in Dublin. He then went through SAP, and through UAE, was then a coach at Cartier, helping people understand how to sell high-quality brands, luxury brands. And Paddy now runs his own consultancy, providing training for, well, Paddy's going to tell you the story, so I'll sit back in the corner as I usually do. Paddy, welcome, and please tell us all about your story, where it started, where it's going, and what you're currently doing at the moment.
Thank you very much, Barry. It's a pleasure to be on the podcast, and I've enjoyed listening to all of your previous guests, and really happy to be invited to share. Thank you. My story, like you said, began in Dublin with business as my degree, and then I did a master's in public affairs and political communications. So I was destined to become a lobbyist, but the path changed when I moved to the UK with SAP, but I continued in the public sector where I was selling software into the UK public sector. And yeah, I think my journey has always been about exploring within and exploring outside as well, in terms of understanding myself and understanding the world around me. So that's really what led me to travel basically around the world and end up closer to home here in the Netherlands now, after approximately 12 or 13 years working and living in many diverse places: Asia, Southeast Asia, New Zealand, the Middle East, India, Africa, working in that region, and back to the Netherlands 2.5 years ago.
Can you give me a little bit of background? You're working there with one of the preeminent brands on the planet, and I understand that the training you provided there was to engage the team in the whole process of luxury brand.
I think the red thread that kind of ties the whole story together is everything is linked to communication. What led me to Cartier was I was actually doing a coaching course, and I was fortunate on reflection that on the course there was a number of employees from Cartier and the Richemont Group that were also part of the course. And I was lucky to be approached to apply for a role a number of months later as an internal coach. So originally it was a sales coach was the role. And I joined an amazing organization, and one that I have such great memories from. And I was coaching the team individually and as a team. And when we say sales coach, we often think that it's how to sell and the techniques. But the style of coaching that I was doing is very much, it's about the person. Who are you? And what is it that's holding you back? And very often it's not the skill set that we have. It's very often the mindset that we have related to the incredible creations that Cartier have and the craftsmanship. Sometimes it's the mental shift of how can I position myself to be able to present this to a client who could buy multiple of these potentially in one go.
And Paddy, what is the process that takes someone's mindset from a point where perhaps they don't have the confidence to do what you've suggested, and that is to sell these very, very highly crafted items from, as I say, one of the preeminent brands. What is it? What is the process that actually takes someone to that level? Because it's a pretty stratospheric level, isn't it? To be able to convey that in a way that it is compelling to someone who's going to be really spending a lot of money investing in these artifacts.
It is. The process is that, first of all, it needs to be a voluntary, intrinsic motivation from the coachee or the individual for them to think or feel that they need to change. It has to begin there. Until they recognize and have the self-awareness to see that they need to perhaps improve or polish what they currently do really well. So the process started with making it voluntary. This was quite a pioneering move that we had offered it on a voluntary basis if they wanted to take it up. And that's where it started. And the process from that point was, once someone had decided they wanted to work on something, it was the clarity on what it was they wanted to work towards or work on. And in my over 1,000 plus hours of coaching, the common denominator links in some way back to self-belief and confidence. That's where most of the topics came back to.
And were people, was it self-belief and confidence that actually motivated them to take the course? Was it lack of self-belief and confidence, or was it that they had the confidence to do the course? And another point that I think is really interesting, since I come from the change environment, is the change transformation environment, is that, of course, we promote very highly the concept of volunteerism and for any change program. And it's interesting that got the engagement by essentially making it a volunteer activity.
That was the shift, I think, that led to making it an option that was available. So those that really wanted it took the opportunity. Typically, it was over 6 to 10 sessions, 1 hour per session, where we looked at the specific topic they wanted to work on. So it wasn't as if everybody said it's confidence or it's self-belief that I want to work on. But what I discovered, distilling all of the sessions that I've done, it may have been the original topic was career progression or conflict within my team, perhaps. And often it came back to, how do I position myself or understand myself? So it's really about self-awareness. The form of coaching that I do is non-directive. It's very much understanding and pulling from within you. What is it that you see or don't see that may be helping you to move forward or maybe holding you back? And the psychology behind incredible creations and how an individual positions that to a client, it is really about creating the desire to buy rather than selling. It's very much how the individual positions themselves with the client.
And so the concept is actually to engage with the client. So the client, at an emotive level, the client is actually buying, being guided through that process and not being sold to. And that's such a skill, isn't it? I mean, for someone to actually have that capability and actually demonstrates a really high level of skill, understanding, and emotional intelligence to do that. What are the stats in terms of people who really get to the point where they go, actually, this isn't for me? Or generally, are you able to bring almost anybody out if you can coach the mindset forward? How does it work?
The most important thing, I think, from the beginning was making it clear that, this is an opportunity and it's an option that is a volunteer basis. So those that did sign up wanted it. And there was, as time progressed, quite a queue of people that wanted to have coaching. So if the commitment isn't there and someone feels that this is what they have to do because their manager said it, somebody said that they needed to do it, you're very unlikely to have any impact. It was very rare that happened. But to say to that person, I get the feeling that it's not the right time for you, perhaps, with this. And I can probably remember once or twice where that happened. So I think it really comes back to that intrinsic motivation, that if you can tap into that and it's coming from, like you said, the volunteer basis, that this is what you want, that's where the biggest impact that I seen happen was when they wanted it from the start, because it's a partnership.
Yeah. And in terms of the success of the program, as it rolled out and as it developed? How was that calibrated? What was the outcome from the corporate perspective? Was it successful? Is it
Yeah,
successful?
I think the best way to describe it is I think I've received recommendations that people have shared rather than me saying how great it was. I think there's quite a few people that have shared recommendations, but I think overall the approach worked very well and everything was measured in terms of metrics and understanding what moved in terms of performance, because the ultimate objective is to multiply performance. And the metrics were, there's some really great case studies that have been produced, but I recommend reading the recommendations rather than me selling myself. Yeah.
And presumably you're also developing teamwork as a core activity, a core capability within the training program. And because this is clearly not a standalone individual activity, this is about teamwork, isn't it? So high performance teams.
Yeah. I think the majority or quite a lot of my work was on an individual basis. And as I progressed, I started to understand and to see that really to truly impact on an organizational level, we need to tap into the collective, really. And I decided 6 or 8 months ago, I started a course with ORS, Organizational Relationships Systems Coaching. And it's very much focused on teams and the collective intelligence, how to tap into and move the team forward. So it's a team coaching approach. And that has been transformational for me in seeing the impact that that's having with teams. Because until you target or focus on the team level, really the leader has such an impact on the team. And unless the leader's in the room as part of the coaching, we're not going to move anything until we kind of address sometimes the topics that people don't want to talk about or don't feel comfortable about talking about. That's where psychological safety comes in through the process to help to create an environment that will bring that out to move the team forward.
It's so consistent with what I've discussed on the various podcasts with people like Simon Hartley, Rick Leander, Tony Underwood, Marcellus Lindsay, where we've discussed high performance teams and how volunteerism is essential, how psychological safety is critical, the ability to do that, and leadership every time is the key element in all of this, that the leaders are providing the vision to get this done, the psychological safety to get it done, kicking barriers out the way to enable it to be done. And suddenly you have a team that's actually, as Tony Underwood has said, caring about each other and working at a team level, and that they can be critical of each other, but in a very constructive way, and they're getting the high performance. How does it work? How does it roll out in your programs?
Yeah, so it's typically a journey, because as I'm sure you're very aware, long-term change takes time, and it's very much a journey approach. So, for example, before the end of last year, I was working with a team that had acquired 2 new companies, and they were trying to bring alignment. So it was one full day working on that as the objective, and it's very much how I describe it is practical and active. You're on your feet, and it's very much a room which has an oval seating pattern, so everybody is facing each other and there's no obstacles like tables between people. So it's using tools like Constellations to get the teams to physically move and show their position related to certain statements linked to alignment, for example. And it really reveals the system or the team to themselves. So we work together on a daily basis. You think lots of things, I think lots of things, but we don't always share it with each other. So my role as luxury performance coach is to reveal that all that's being unsaid in a physical way and verbal way to help remove the blockers to move the team forward.
And for our dear listener and viewer, I asked the questions that I hope they would ask. Can you just expand upon Constellations? Because not everybody will have been or are familiar with Constellations. How does that work, and what does it bring out of the team, and what does it bring to the team?
So Constellations is basically, when we think about, as I'm sure people are aware, the night sky and the stars and where are they positioned. So the tool of Constellation is getting people are on their feet and it's related to a specific topic. So it might be, for example, how I feel related to conflict within the team. You would have 0 to 10 marked out on the floor where people would move towards where they feel they are linked to how they feel about conflict. So you might have some people that are really close, so they feel comfortable. So they're close to the center of the room. They feel comfortable with conflict. And you might have those that are on the absolute outside, number 9 or number 10. And that in itself, nothing really needs to be said because physically you see everyone moving around the room. And my role is to highlight, observe, and to reveal to the team what they may or may not see and ask them, what are you noticing? The fact that most of your team are on the outside and we have 2 people that are in the center. What does that tell you about your team? For example, it's a simple illustration of how constellations work, but it's really revealing. And the part I love about it the most is that it's active. It's not a training session and it's not about me being the expert. It's more about harnessing the collective intelligence because the answer is there. It's in the team.
Yeah.
We just need to create an environment for it to reveal itself.
Yeah, and extremely powerful, I should imagine. The thread here is all about there's no such thing as teaching, only learning. And I credit the great Monty Roberts with that statement. No such thing as teaching, only learning. And the ability to kind of internalize that, having experienced it, and simple tools, isn't it? Our experience is that people really hook into the simple tools. When you throw away the iPhones and only temporarily, obviously for the duration of the course, you put the iPhones to one side and you get things like cards that people can touch. They're visceral. They can move them about, get great interaction and great internalization and understanding, isn't it, from doing these simple things, really reinforcing the training message.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the big theme for me within my coaching is related to curiosity. And I try to infuse and share that in the team coaching or individual coaching that I do. And just one more question. That's my mantra is even if we think we know the answer, how can we bring a beginner mindset to what we already know as an expert? But that one more question might reveal something that we didn't know. And especially within teams and connections between team members, that one more question can sometimes be the bridge that can open the lines of communication that could transform the performance of the team that wasn't there before.
And what about recurrent training? Is there a program where people can come back, refresh, enhance, improve?
Yes. So the majority of the work that I'm doing in my own business is related to individuals, teams, and organizations. So coaching is the main area of specialty, and I also do facilitation of workshops connected to that, related to storytelling or story selling through the use of stories, related to resilience and emotional intelligence as well as 3 of the main areas to support the work outside of coaching as well.
It's uncanny actually how what you're doing is so similar to what we're doing on our own training courses. Very, very similar. And right now you moved from Cartier, but you're now working very much in the luxury space, the global luxury space. You're dealing with some very high ticket organizations right now with your own organization. Could you just take us through that without any confidentiality issues, but that you're now thoroughly engaged and heavily engaged with global brands?
Yeah. So related to the story that led me kind of back to Europe, I think I transferred with Cartier back to Europe in a new role. As time went on, people kept on saying to me, when are you going to do your own thing? When are you going to do your own thing? And the time came and it was like, this is the right time. So the bulk of my experience over the last 5.5 years has been within the luxury industry, and I've continued to expand into new clients within the luxury environment, and also into new industries, automotive and hospitality, and into back to my roots where I first started, related to supporting political organizations and their teams to create more clarity in their performance. So they're the main areas of focus now for my own operation as founder of my own company. And what I've noticed is the amount of crossover between the different industries as well, in how it all links to experience, like creating an experience, creating a connection, and building a long-term relationship. It's not about a short-term approach, and there's no coincidence that most of the organizations that operate in that space are around for close to 200 years. There's not many companies that survive 1 century, let alone 2. And that's what's fascinated me about the lessons learned, because what are they doing that's enabled them to last that long? And I think it
is long-term relationships, long-term trusting relationships.
Yeah.
And that brings the next point, isn't it? That trust is absolutely critical in the commercial environment in which you're operating from luxury brands, but also it's throughout the organizational structure, isn't it? That trust is the thing that underpins organizations and long-term relationships.
I love that you raised that point. Yeah, because within coaching, it's all about confidentiality. It's about trust. Unless we have the feeling that this is confidential, and as previously as an internal coach, building that connection that someone feels comfortable to share something that they may not have shared with anyone before.
Yeah.
And it might have nothing got to do with their role, and it might have something got to do with who they are as a person. And that confidentiality and trust within the coaching, but also within the organization and the organizations that I work with, is critical. Because long-term, the currency of relationships is emotion. And how do you create the emotional connection? Not on just the first time, but on a continual basis, because people remember how they feel. They don't always remember what you said, or as Maya Angelou said, people will forget what you said or what you did, but they will always remember how you made them feel.
Yeah, exactly. And I love that. The currency of relationships is emotion. Paddy, it's fascinating. And tell me, let me just ask you a question. Do you do this in a group environment only, or do you do individual coaching? How do you present your offering and your training? How is that communicated?
Yeah, so the current work that I'm doing is I'm very much moving more now into the team space. I'm working with teams, so that's working with the team as a whole, impact unit. It could be over 1 day, split over 6 months, for example, and working with individuals, so specifically related to topics that they come to me to support. My ultimate objective is to multiply performance really for the individual, for the leader, or for the team, and at the organizational level. So that's where my energy is focused now. Yeah.
I mean, it's a fascinating story, and actually one I'd like us to come back and address again. With sort of getting short of time. Are you happy to come back, Paddy, and we can build upon this, because it's I can see the carry through here in almost every activity that you can imagine here, from luxury brands to organizational development, change, transformation, businesses, new businesses. It's such a powerful message that you're communicating.
Thank you, Barry, and appreciate the opportunity. And I'd more than love to come back to join you for a future episode.
Well, perfect. So listen, if you can remind our dear listener and viewer of your name and your company, and we'll ensure that all of the details, everybody, will be on the summary that comes along with this podcast, including links to Paddy's training. So Paddy, over to you, just to remind everybody so we get it absolutely right.
Thank you, Barry. The last thing I want to say just before I share that was I had a gift that I wanted to share with the viewers and listeners. Like I mentioned earlier, curiosity and questions are something that I hold very dear to my heart. So one more question. I've compiled a list of the most impactful questions that I've used that may support you as a leader or as an individual for self-reflection. And feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. Paddy Nolan is my name, and my website is paddynolan.eu, Echo Unicorn. If that's the right
uniform, Paddy. It's uniform.
Uniform.
Echo uniform.
There we go. I'm speaking to the expert there. So thank you love to connect and continue the conversation. And I'm more than happy to share that resource as a gift. If you're interested, feel free to reach out, and thank you for listening.
Great. And we'll get all of Paddy's links up on the podcast. Paddy's also a connection of mine on LinkedIn. So if you need to route through me to find Paddy, that's where you'll find him. So listen, Paddy Nolan, thank you so much indeed. It's been great talking, and I'm really looking forward to the next one. We're dealing with some clients at the moment who will be particularly interested in what you're offering, what you're saying. So once again, thanks very much. We'll see you next time. It'll be sooner rather than later, and we're going to run this podcast a couple of times, at least through LinkedIn, and we'll take some key clips from us as well, everybody. So listen in. Do remember to share. Do pass it down your networks, and let's get some more from Paddy and the other great contributors to the Just Great People podcast from the Success Consultancy. Paddy Nolan, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you, Ray.
Many thanks for listening to our Just Great People podcast. And you can really help us. Please do remember to like and subscribe, and please share this podcast with everybody you know. We'd really appreciate it. Thank you. So that's it for today's Just Great People podcast from the Success Consultancy. We hope and trust you've enjoyed it. Please join us next time, and please do remember to subscribe. Thanks for joining us.